Well, hi there, and thanks for joining us at this deeper dive session on the purpose combination, which is part of our series of living in purpose, on purpose, our intentional way of living in the purposes of God for our lives. Now, the purpose combination, you have heard me explain that we often live our lives with a kind of, well, let's just do the right things, have a good routine, and we will surely walk in the purposes of God. And that's a little bit of hit and hope. You might want to reflect, however, that also what happens with us as Christians is we read verses like Romans 8:29 that God is going to conform us to the image of his Son, or actually, indeed, Romans 8:28 that we know all things work together for good. And we look at verses like that, and to be honest, what we live is a kind of Christian fatalism. It'll all work out in the end. I wonder if you have gone between the two extremes, just being a really good person doing the right things, or that you think, well, it doesn't really matter what I do, I will eventually end up where I'm supposed to end up. Now, it is true that God's purposes are deep and secure over our lives. The book of Isaiah tells us that nothing can thwart the purposes of God, and that is true. But here's the thing for deeper dive, and if you're watching with your cell members or in a small group, perhaps you could have a talk about this thought. When was the last time that you had to intervene in your life, and if you hadn't have done something, then you know that your life would have taken a bad turn or not a constructive direction? That actually it was you that changed the course of things by your initiative and your desires. We cannot live just in, well, God will sort it out, and we can't live just in automatic mode. We have to be engaged in our purpose. Why don't you pause this video for a few moments and just reflect? And on the handout, I've given you some space to write when was the last time you had to act. And also, actually, on the handout, you'll see a whole list of scriptures that assure you that the purposes of God are strong. And maybe you'd like to read those scriptures before we carry on. Well, as we continue with our deeper dive, we learnt in the message that there are four real elements, or combination of four things that make up our purpose. And the first one is a sense of calling, or your calling. Now, I didn't mention this in the message, so let's go deeper a little bit about calling, because that's a huge issue for Christians, and it's often that in which we get confused. Oh, what is my calling? How do I know it's God's will? I'm going to give you a simple formula to know where your calling lies. First of all, what is it that makes you sad? Something that you see and you say, that should not be. It may be famine in the world, and you feel drawn towards developing an NGO for hunger relief, or it may be around children that you want them to be cared for, or it may be that you can't stand dishonesty in the workplace, or whatever. Something that makes you sad and moves your heart. That's where your calling's moving to. Secondly, you can discern your calling by what makes you mad. David looked at Goliath and said, how dare he defy the armies of Israel? Something burned within him. And there are times that what makes you mad directs you to your calling, or should I say, what gives you a righteous anger that just should not be. And actually, you know, the third element of discovering your calling is what makes you glad. Where you find life, There are some people, you look at what they do and they're so happy in it, or they feel they just do it easily with joy because that's where they feel like they're in the sweet spot. What makes you sad? What makes you mad? What makes you glad? Those are the things that if you look at those things, that's where you will find your calling. The second part of the purpose combination of finding our purpose is there will be seasons when you have to have courage. What courage is choosing future faith over present pain. Remember that definition. Perhaps you'd like to talk about it in your small group or in your cell. That you choose a future of faith and life in God over present pain. You might now, this very moment, be in an uncomfortable situation and you don't want to upset anybody, but actually it's going to take some courage for you to speak up and move on. Courage will always come to us. When David was in Ziklag and he saw the devastation that was left behind, he went and found strength in the Lord, as we heard on Sunday, but also he then had to have the courage to act. You will always stay in the situation you're in if you don't ask the Lord for courage. Remember Joshua, caught in the transition between an older leader and his new future. What was the thing that God said to him? Be strong and courageous. If you want to move towards your purpose, there will always be seasons, choices, and moments of courage. The third combination in our lives, and here you may want to reflect about who is in your life, but the third combination is simply that we will all need the right connections or relationships. What happens is, particularly in times when we're having a difficult time, we always drift towards isolation. That's our nature. And that's why our cell ministry is so important here in KT, because we need to stay connected. And of course we can connect in lots of ways, even though that's the principal way. Now, I want to ask you though, and dive deeper into the type of connections, because what we usually do as pastors and sometimes in church is we worship at what I call the altar of involvement. So long as people are involved, so long as they are coming along, then that's the right connection. Well, that there is great health in that, but there is a deeper dive about the type of connections we have in our lives. I want to encourage you to develop 3 types of relationship, and I'll use biblical characters for them. First of all, Paul, Barnabas, and then Timothy. You need a Paul in your life, someone who is apostolic even, somebody you can look up to, somebody who inspires you, somebody who you think is ahead of you, somebody who you think you can receive from. That's your Paul person. That's the person who you can go to and you actually know that they've got good knowledge and good wisdom. You need a Paul in your life. We often fill our lives with Pauls, but one of the things I've noticed is that we don't often fill our lives with a second type of person, and that's the Barnabas, the son of encouragement, our friends or our mates to hang around with, people who we're perhaps not going to receive absolutely everything from, but actually they're our friends and we can do life with them and they can be with them and we can journey with them. We can perhaps talk over our frustrations with them. We can receive comfort from them. We can receive encouragement, and actually we can have a laugh with them. And we can talk about the weather with them, and we can talk about our families with them. They are our encouragers group. They are the ones who are probably at the same place as us, and we are journeying together. We're learning together. I find that Christians tend to want to only have Paul in their life, but they're lacking friends. They're lacking Barnabas. The third type of relationship that's important for us is that we would need to have a Timothy, somebody who we are helping. Remember the famous principle that we all live by here at Kensington Temple in 2 Timothy chapter 2 verse 2. Commit to faithful men that they may teach others also. We need people in our lives whom we are helping. Now, to move into our purpose, it's important to connect and to attend. Those things are vital. But it's also important that we kind of do a relationships audit and see, well, who is my Paul? Who are my Barnabases? Who am I helping? And that's really important for our connection and life. Moving to our purpose and combining the right things has a fourth element, and that is our character and how we celebrate our successes, how we live out the things that God has given to us, that we live out properly and carry those properly, so that actually our successes don't become shallow. In fact, I'd like to introduce you to a book. It's called Halftime by Bob Burford. I'm sorry, it's got a coffee stain on the front because I've used this book so often. But as you think about coming to a transition stage in your life, what Bob says is that we start of our lives, we are interested in success. But after a while, we have to transition to moving away from the model of success and actually moving towards making our lives the key driver of it being significance, the significance of helping others. Hey, let me read you a little thing that Bob says. He says this: in the first half of life, there's barely enough time to go beyond just the basics. We are hunter-gatherers doing our best to provide for our family, to advance our careers and to pass on our beliefs and our values to our children. In addition, for men, but increasingly it's for women, in fact it's probably equally for women, we are certainly becoming and growing into finding our warrior self in the first half of our lives. We need to prove ourselves and prove to others that we can accomplish something big. And the best way to do that is to become increasingly focused and intense on our success. Well, what Bob does is go on to say we need to transition away from thinking about success to significance. I didn't really highlight this in the message, but to begin to say to you, this whole paradigm of moving from success, reflecting, into significance is this really important stage of developing our character, because it's our character that will lead us to our real purpose in God. George Bernard Shaw said it this way: there are two sources of unhappiness in our lives. When we don't get what we want, number one, and number two, when we do get what we want. In other words, we can't handle some of the good things that God has given us because we haven't developed our character in order to carry our success over into significance. Why don't you reflect on whether you're striving just to climb a ladder or whether you're striving to help other people climb over the wall that they are in, and that you can give them success and significance for them. Four things: the purpose combination. First of all, your calling. Second of all, courage. Third of all, connections, but the right connections, not just lots of connections, the right connections. And finally, character. One of the things that's important in this deeper dive is to kind of understand that excellence is mundane. You just have to keep going. It happens over a long period of time to be excellent, and sometimes it's the ones who simply show up, do what they need to do, but deepen as they come to this sense of purpose in their lives. Well, I hope I've given you quite a lot to think about and discuss, and I hope that even if you're young, you'll quickly get to your half-time moment of realising that life isn't just about success, but about your significance. God bless you. Let's walk deeper into the purposes of God, and I'll see you next time.
All blessing and